Welcome to the Sparky Coach podcast. This platform was built by Sparkies for Sparkies. We simply exist to make business owners more profitable, or businesses more profitable and more predictable. So we want to work with people that work hard because we love working hard too, that work smart because you got to be on top of the business, people that are kind because no one likes a dickhead. Am I right? People who want results because that's what we're here for, right? And people who want to be part of a like-minded community. So if you're interested in hearing more about the platform, please reach out and enjoy the podcast. Sparky Coach Lounge Pod, Cam and Crowe back at ya.
What's up?
The A-team?
What's up?
What's that?
Yeah, please.
The self-appointed.
Give us a set of flies and we'd be dangerous.
Yeah, I actually fixed my mother-in-law's fairy lights this morning with a pair of ungodly needle nose pliers. She must have sourced these things from the depth of the Titanic. They were so discolored and so rusty, and I'm just like, I'm still going to work my magic. Anyway, I fixed them. Good job, me. Talking today about ways to make money in a month. This is almost a follow-up on ways to make money in a job that I did a solo pod on recently. Maybe it's come out, maybe it hasn't, whatever. It's coming out soon. So ways to make money in a month, it's so interesting because on a job, you sort of got, you got your job and day, I think, the major metrics. So per job you're looking at, there's ways to make money. Is the front cost, did I quote it well? Handling, how did I go? Did I capture the variations? Did we handle it well on site? And then you've got the back costing, where you reference those first two. Did I quote it correctly? Did I handle it well? And then you've got the change component. So your front cost, your handle, your back cost, and then your change. Do I need to keep doing what I'm doing here? Keep quoting how I'm quoting? Do I need to change something? It's a very important metric. And then you're looking at your day as a whole. Maybe your job made money. Maybe your day didn't. Maybe you had multiple profitable jobs that week. Maybe your week didn't make sense because you finished early Friday, started late on Thursday, and you had a big gap when you didn't schedule something on the Wednesday at midday. And there's multiple reasons why your job can go well and your day cannot go good. Maybe you only had 3 jobs and you needed 4 or 5. Maybe you had 4 jobs and you needed 6. There's so many rhymes and reasons there, and that's why you got to look at the job, yes, and the day, yes. And it's interesting because everyone wants, if you look left to right at your close a month, you've got your revenue component, you've got your cost of goods sold, which is billable labor, materials, subcontractors, basically anything billable on the job. Then you've got, that leaves you with a gross profit. So you've got your revenue less cost of goods sold leaves you with gross profit. After gross profit, you've got other revenue, and that's an interesting metric. Was there apprentice grants taken into consideration? Did we sell a van? Did we achieve money from another avenue? You've got your cost of operations after that, which is your non-billable labor, aka admin, aka in-house bookkeepers, aka operations managers, estimators, all that kind of stuff. You've got your non-billable people and your operating expenses combining as one in that metric. So left to right, you've got your revenue on your far left, and your cost of goods sold leaves with gross profit. Then your cost of operations, which is all your non-billable components, leave you with your net profit. Now, if I asked anyone what they want, what do you want more of in your business? And you're going to say, more net profit. I want more asbestos, to paraphrase The Simpsons. I want more net profit. I want to be left over with more, because there's the turnover and then there's the leftover. And we all want to be left over with more. That's the probably big thing. How do I do the same thing but be left with more money? So when we close a month, the interesting thing, and why I referenced the jobs at the start, the interesting thing is what makes up your revenue component, which is an incredibly important metric, but by itself means absolutely nothing. If your revenue is $1 million a month and you're spending $1 million a month, then you're left with 0. And anyone can do that, really. If your revenue is $1 million a month and you're left with negative, that's bad. Don't do that again. If your revenue is $1 million and you're left with a 20% net, you're pretty thankful at that point, I would say. So there's the turnover and then there's the leftover. The leftover gives the turnover context, and we're shooting for a 20 to 35% net profit. That's after we put you as a market wage in the cost of goods sold. So what could you walk 3 doors down and get 120 grand plus super, 150 grand, 100 grand? If you're on the tools, probably 100 to 120. If you're in the office, 120 to 150 plus super. So you should be including yourself as a market wage in the cost of goods sold, or if you're in the office, in the operating expenses, very important to get those metrics correct and separate accordingly. And so, but you want to be left with 20 to 35%. And obviously, the higher the revenue, the more you should be left with. And 20% of a higher number is a higher number. But it's interesting thing, like, what is the revenue? It's all the jobs that perform that month. It's all the progress claims. It's the little jobs. It's the medium-sized jobs. It's all the stuff that went on to. It's the money that came in that month. So when we start left to right on a close a month, the first component you look at is the revenue, and most of us want more net profit. And more net profit, a huge common ground where people have dropped money is they're not quoting properly, they're not handling properly, and they're not getting their hours in. That's going to show in your revenue. So if I said to you, what do you want? More profit. I'm like, cool. What do you need to do then? You need to measure every single job, because that dictates what revenue comes in. So it's so interesting to reference, because people want more net profit, but they don't want to do what's required to get that, which is measure every single job and day for profit. And it's crazy to me to think that there's a disconnection between what you want and what you need to do. What do I want? A six pack. Okay, well, you got to get to the gym. You got to eat less, eat better, or eat less, or both. And you got to be consistent with what you're doing over time. And there's this seed time and harvest. There's cause and effect in all your life, in your personal life, in your business life. There's if I want that, I need to sow this seed. And most of us, or all of us, want more net profit or a better margin, and we're not doing what's required to get that, or we're doing what's required for a season, and then we're falling off the tracks, falling off the wagon. And it's not good enough. We need to consistently execute the checking of every single job, every single day, every single week, every single month, because that's where the net profit is, or that's where it's leaking out. That's where it's going. That's where it's found. So that's so interesting. But left to right, start with revenue. But yeah, where's your head at?
So, I mean, I like that opening. It was a monologue almost. I think I was very impressed. We want more of something that we don't know how to get to is not the answer you're looking for. It's like, we want more of something, we need to know how we get there. Quite simply, we've got to look at measuring the job. So if we're looking in a left to right sense, revenue, COGs, get a GP, got other revenue, then you got your cost of operations, which leaves you with a nice little netty profit at the end of the day that you can do whatever the hell you want with. It doesn't bother me one bit. However, often the underlying issue is like, where do I begin to fix my problem? I'm not, the net profit isn't where I want it to be, and I need to do something about it. Where do I begin? Now, this is really, really interesting, because we have a look at it and come across it a fair bit, is that I'm going to say that by doing one thing can also uncover a couple of other issues underlying. Now, those underlying issues can't be discovered until the sort of base principle is identified, I guess, action, so to speak. And at its core, I'm going to turn back to it and have a look at it, is we've got to measure every day. So we've got to measure the job. So what do we get out of measuring a job? Well, we get a couple of things out of it, which is super important, is we get an understanding of, was that job profitable or not in a microcosm? So the amount of hours that also the amount of money we charge for that job, so the income received or the revenue that we receive for that, versus the costs associated with it. So the labor, so the time spent on the job, and then the material spent on the material cost spent on the job, gives us, again, in a microcosm, gives us a GP for that job, and then also a net profit. So how are we performing individually on that little job? How do you build a cake? You build a cake with layers of cake. So if you layer your individual jobs on top of each other, how do they stack up? That's what you get at the end of the month. So if you're stacking up good, mediocre, and poor you're going to get a bit of a mixed bag result, right? And depending on what those stacks, how high they go, that's where your outcome is going to be at the end of the month. So we're looking at we're looking at where the costs are sitting and where the labor is sitting on it all. Now, the key things that come out of this, what I generally find out of it, is the performance of that individual job. So did we perform where it needed to be? The influences on this is, if it's a quoted job, is did we allow enough time and did we allow enough material? Really simplistically, it's either a yes or no. Now, I'm going to say very, very rarely do we see that not enough material was allowed. More often than not, the material's a tick. Where it comes unstuck is that we think we are Superman and we've quoted the job, for me, the best electrician within the postcode of 4215 on the Gold Coast. Shout out to all my brotherhood on the Gold Coast. That I'm the best to do this, right? I can do this. Little do we know, did we take into consideration that we spent an hour on site looking at the job. We marked up and sketched up a little bit of a plan of it. We then went through and quoted the job, and then we've handed it to Robbo, and it's like, Robbo, time starts now. Go for it, right? And so Robbo's got to get that 2 or 3 hours of knowledge that you've consumed over a period of time into his hot little head, that then transfers through the neuro pathways into his screwdriver spinning and plier wielding hands to execute that job in a time frame that is probably unachievable from the get-go, right? So what you've learned from that is that the labor causes most of the problem a lot of the time. And I think that's fair to say. Would you agree, Crowe, that the labor is always the bit that gets people unstuck majority of the time?
Yeah, it's so interesting because electrical, you're moving, roughly paraphrasing, 70% labor, 30% materials, where aircon and solar are the opposite ways. And a lot of time, a large materials move can, a good 20% of a higher number is a higher number. So if you're moving 10 grand a day and in solar or aircon and you make 20%, then that reverse engineered over those 8 hours is going to be hyper profitable. Net profit per hour metric as opposed to electrical. So a lot of times a large materials move can mask a poor labor move. Poor labor. I love that as Sparky Coach, we're moving away from, what is my hourly rate, which is a great question to ask on its own right, but moving into, what is the job's net profit on that? And how could I have gone a little bit better at that? Because you can make money from a couple of ways: labor rate, reducing your cost operations. You can make money from subcontractors or subcontracting, and you can make money from materials. There's multiple ways to skin the cat, or you rent out your plant and equipment for the day. So as long as the job is balancing out, which you need to know, it's okay. But yeah, labor is normally the biggest blowout is labor, and your consideration of labor at the start of like, I'll smash that out in a day. And then you've quoted it in the middle of the day. So that day's lost 4 billable hours. You've gone there, instead of going there with a tradie only, you've gone there with a tradie and 2 apprentices and a dog. And the dog's got billable hours. It's like I haven't handled how I quoted it. It hasn't gone how I thought. Or that apprentice was meant to go with that tradie. That tradie was sick, so I brought him along for the ride along. All of a sudden, it's the road traders philosophy. I see you watching me, watching you, and now no one's making money. Everyone's watching. No one's making money. And it's you're watching. And this is the context of a job. You got the front costs, the handling, and the back costs. Most people spend their time front costing and quoting and doing, and there's no reference. So it's like, what do you mean? I quoted that job. That was $2.5 grand. I quoted that well. And I was like, you didn't measure it. You cooked the handling of that whole thing. You made a mistake. You didn't check. You didn't test. You carried the wrong team there, and you carried the wrong information there. You can't just spend your time in the first two. You've got to be back costing and checking. You need the holistic picture. So yeah, labor is intense. And the biggest problem you see with a revenue metric standalone is that it doesn't mean anything. Like, what if you have a progress claim for a project early on, you have a deposit for a switchboard, you have a purchase, a sale of a switchboard at cost price. Like, what does the revenue component make up of? It's just the money coming in. Like, 1 month will tell you nothing, and 12 months will probably tell you everything. And so it's like the revenue component is by itself, standalone. It should be illegal to reference a revenue metric. I do 100K months, and typically at Sparky Coach, when we're selling a product, our revenue, you can pretty much predict the net profit of like, I got X amount revenue. You know, it's quite typical and predictable. But in the trade world, there's too many moving parts with labor materials to ensure that revenue number, that revenue metric guarantees net profit. No revenue metric, let's face it, guarantees net profit. It doesn't guarantee anything. It's just a number that is meaningless. And if I've got my ego based in the revenue metric only, we did $1 million month, a $500 grand month, a 50 grand month. My ego is based in that. I'm going to move hell or high water to get to that point, but I have to spend 10 grand on advertising. I have to spend 20 grand on a salesperson. I have to spend this on that to get to this. Yeah, I achieved my target. I didn't make any money. So who sort of cares at that? So you need the revenue metric and the gross and the net profit. They're your major movers. And arguably on that, the biggest movers is the gross and net per hour is your biggest movers, which is the per job. But yeah, it's so interesting to reference like the revenue metric where we're starting at. Most people, where they get it wrong is they're not getting the hours that they thought in. That's a huge mover, your labor efficiency. So labor efficiency is a huge, which is paid versus allocated hours. I'm not getting my hours in. Quality of hours is more referencing the projects that I had hours that are of a low quality. There's setting up cable tray with your 2 weapon staff members with all the materials on site and all the gear. And then there's setting up cable tray with no plans, no idea, wrong crew, 2 apprentices.
No materials.
No materials. So it's like,
yeah, right.
Yeah. So one takes a day and one takes 5 days. So it's no good just allocating the hours and making sure you got 100% labor efficiency, which is paid versus allocated hours, without referencing, hang on a minute, all that quality sucked. And sometimes on the larger projects, specifically if you've lumped your progress claims in early, so you're getting early money can mask a huge problem. So I'm getting my money in early, it's covering all my discrepancies. I'm going to find out I didn't make money on this job 12 months down the track, 6 months down the track, 18 months down the track. All of a sudden I'm sending labor and materials to a job where there's nothing left to claim. So my revenue is incredibly low. I'm doing everything right. I've changed my handling, I've corrected it, but there wasn't enough money in the job to begin with. So my last 12 months looks good. My last quarter looks terrible, and everything's going right, but that one job, everything's going well. But that's why quoting is, it takes time to iron out these quality months. But yeah, labor efficiency, quality of hours, and profit on rate. Profit per hour or profit per job is the huge movers in the revenue sense. And even if you've let's take 2 examples. One is you work with cost plus stuff and you factored you to not be billable, and all of a sudden you become billable. So your overhead per billable resource drops down, so you're more profitable. The other one is you're meant to get 32 hours in per week, but you're not getting any hours in because you're feeding the team, or you're meant to get 20 hours in, but you're not getting any hours in because you don't have the workload, or you're like, I'm full-time office now, it's all good, it's cooked. Like if you're meant to be getting 20 hours in and you're getting nothing, you're going to raise your overheads up for everyone else, and you might not be profitable across a month because you're not getting your hours in. So there's so many, like in the revenue metric alone, there's so many moving parts because every job is its own moving part. Every day is its own moving part. Every week, it's no good even like, I know we close a week, but you should close the days out. Like it's crazy to think the moving parts associated with. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the revenue metric. Subcontractors can come in, and sometimes a really high performing subcontractor, like, let's face it, most people's break even rate for tradies is $100 to $120 an hour. And if you're getting a subby for 80 or 75 or 70, that could be $20 an hour cheaper than your break even rate, or 25 or 15. So you're better off using subcontractors. And let's face it, most subcontractors, not all, most went out on their own because they're weapons. So you're getting a high quality person at a low rate or a low price. So they're performing, they're getting their hours in, but they're cheaper than your tradies. So they can mask a job. You might do a job for 500 grand, $1 million, 200 grand, 100 grand, whatever, you might go really good in it. You do the same thing with your own staff members and you might be going backwards. So it's like, once again, the quality of hours, who was doing the work? If you're selling labor and materials are relatively consistent in their delivery, well, the big mover is labor. Who's doing it? Am I doing it? Are you doing it? Is Jimmy doing it? Because Jimmy sucks. And Jimmy's giving us no rep of anything.
We love Jimmy.
Just a hot wrap.
Going back to the measuring of the job, right? So touching on that is that I touched on that there's your labor and there's your costs that are associated with it. I think then one thing that a lot of people don't always look at is the why. So what are the notes associated with what is the information telling us for this particular job? So it went really well. So like cracking high percentage net profit. Why? Right? So what were the influences? Equally, didn't go so well, right? So maybe broke even, maybe made a bit of a loss. Why? What were the influences on that? Went mediocre. Why? What are the influences on that? And like Crowe touched on before, there's so many of these influences associated with it all. So it could have been misquoted from the start. It could have been poorly handled in the office. So like we didn't get the cable tray. Who would have thought we need a cable tray? Then it takes, more than, we couldn't walk into Heyman's and get 25 lengths of 150 tray and all of the consumable items associated with it. I mean, why couldn't we? Like, it just seems ungodly to think that. So it wasn't organized well. So then the flow and effect, and I would say that an unorganized job from day one, right? Think of the ball, like the snowball going down the mountain. It just becomes an out of control, like boulder. It's very hard to rein that job back in once you've let the dogs out, so to speak. It's like
even having the right tools. Like, if you've got a rod cutter versus grinder or versus like hacksaw and file, and that's an exaggerated example, but it's just having the right tools for the right job is incredibly important. Cable roll.
So the why. So what went well? What did so understanding it, because then what you'll start to see is patterns occurring, and the patterns that you'll often find are associated with a number of things. So if we're looking in the positive front side of things and the negative side of it all, it's going to relate around a few things. So it could be staff related, for example. So there's a pattern developing with particular type of people. Who are your guns and who are your not so guns? How it was quoted. So did we quote it well? Did we not quote it well? Did we handle it well? Did we not handle it well? Like what the pattern is creating. And then after you've identified what those patterns are that are consistently occurring, there's a bit of a rhythm that starts to take shape of it around the type of work. So generally speaking, there's types of work that people really enjoy doing and excel at because they're confident in their quoting, they know how to order the gear, and they know how to execute it. So the pattern that's being developed is this is the type of work that we need to be doing versus this is the type of work that we shouldn't be doing. So what pattern is the measurement of the job starting to show you, and why is that the case, and getting an understanding around it? Because there's no point continuing going down the dead end road if you have another path that is like the M1, like just a fresh. Just like we know that we can just do 100 Ks an hour here and everything is dreamy. I think we can all associate the type of jobs that it almost doesn't feel like work for whatever reason. Like it's just dreamy, it's easy, it's enjoyable, everyone gets on, the boombox is cranking, it's good vibes on site, it's enjoyable versus, the complete like nightmare scenario of like, how are we going to get out of this alive scenario? So those is what I think you want to be getting out of the measurement of the job, because it starts to give you an influence on what you are doing well and not doing well. And essentially, it's a really easy way of, like, it paints a picture almost of how you are performing as the business owner in the nicest possible way. It's like, hey, you're probably falling short here. You're not getting enough time to get the jobs organized. You're rushing your quotes, or this is the wrong type of work to be doing for these people. So one thing we come across often that you'll see on it is people who are locked into like pricing. So like they're being dictated to the costs by someone else who, shock horror, has no idea of the costs involved with doing that particular job. And then they're flatlining and it's not going well. So measure the job tells you everything. The direct correlation out of that I wanted to get to is the labor efficiency. And this is probably something that I am beyond passionate about. And I'll reference past life timesheets. So when we used to, I used to tick them off basically and approve them each week for the team. And there was an ungodly amount of time associated with the office, like the shed, like the office. And we looked at it and we were like, which is, if you're reading between the lines, it's unbillable time. Like, what am I associating that to? So we basically were like, you can't put the office on the timesheet anymore. Like, it doesn't. If you put that on there, it'll just be rejected and you'll have to have a conversation with me, et cetera, et cetera. So what it forced everyone to do was to allocate the time that they were spending on a particular task to that particular job, which then in turn fills out your day and then in turn fills out your week. So that, I'm just going to use round numbers here. There's 40 hours in the week. There's 8 hours a day. What were those 8 hours allocated to? Which then gets you a labor efficiency. There should, in rare circumstances, and I'm going to say very rare, I'm talking about like some kind of strange, rare animal like the Tasmanian tiger that may or may not exist. Depends if you go into the deep, dark wilderness of Tasmania. We'll have to speak to Barron or Hib to see if it is or is not true. That the labor efficiency tells you everything. It literally does not lie. Are we organized to begin with, right? Are we running jobs in a organized, efficient manner? Now, I'm really, really passionate about this. Like, so if your guys start at 7 and they finish at 3, every single minute of those 8 hours need to be allocated to a particular job. And people will say to me, oh, but we did a rubbish dump. We did a dump run. Cool, no problems at all. Where were you dumping rubbish from? Oh, it was for 4 jobs. That's cool. Allocate a portion of the time spent to each one of those 4 jobs. It will give you an accurate metric of what time you actually spent on that particular job. And even better, if it was a cost plus job, you can bill that time because it was part of the job, right? So labor efficiency, really, really important. It tells you everything. And what I will say is, if you spend the exercise, if you don't do this currently, and I strongly encourage everyone to do this timesheet wise, it'll be coming out in a pod, maybe before or after this, I'm not sure, that just measure your time for a week, right? Just see where it just goes. And Crowe was telling me a story the other day that there was a job from one of our members, who shall remain nameless, that they could have just spent 3 days in a row on the job, but they bounced around on that particular job across the 5 days of the week and was only getting in the half day here, or there was a bit of time here. Whereas if they just spent the 3 days there, job done, move on to the next ones. So labor efficiency, really, really important to get an understanding of where you are. Are you organized enough? Are you efficient enough? Are you, do you have enough work? Because often, sometimes the thing that you're masking through the disorganization is that you might not have enough work at all. So labor efficiency tells you everything. Really, really strongly encourage you where possible to measure, because that gives you the holistic outcome around where it's sitting. So if we're looking at the revenue side of things, the revenue associated with it for the business is one factor associated with it all. Now, if your revenue is not where it needs to be, it's why. And what impacts on the revenue? So it's all the jobs that you have going on, all the small claims that need to be done, all the small scenarios, all the small situations, all that stuff that needs to be done, is that they come together and build up the revenue, the progress claims, the small job that was done, and we're recommencing in a month's time. So I strongly encourage you to make sure that you check where your jobs are at and making sure that you're getting that revenue sent out. Now, obviously you got your revenue. Now that's going to be offset for your gross profit versus your cost of goods sold. So what makes up that? Your labor, your subcontractors, and your materials. Now, this can paint a little bit of a picture here. So if your materials are really, really high, right, but your revenue is quite low, for example, why is that occurred? So if you're having a look at the jobs, we can have a bit of an understanding here. So it could be a couple of things here. So a couple of scenarios could have occurred. Could have misquoted something. We might not have allowed enough material associated with it, so we haven't been able to cover all of our costs. I would say more than likely is that you have not made enough of a progress claim, or you've bought materials ahead of time and you're going to be carrying that particular cost for your client. So where possible, I strongly encourage you to make sure that if you are purchasing any materials for a particular job, that they're stage claims and that they're communicated with when, hey, we need to buy the light fittings for this particular job, and you just let them know about it, right? So the COGs can have an impact. Where's our labor sitting at? Hey, are our labor costs where they need to be? Some other instances that I've come across is the correct information being fed in to our accounting software? So have we got any double ups in there? So I came across this the other day with one of our members that they doubled up on their materials. So their material costs were actually higher than anticipated because they had double supply invoices in there. So if you're not all over the integration side of things with getting your supplier invoices in there, or you're not all over, hey, how I'm reading this, feel free to shout out. I can happy to help with that scenario. So that's the COGS part. We get to our GP percentage. Where is that sitting? What is that telling us here? Then we move on to our cost of operations. Now, these are non-billable items that we touched on here. So we're moving left to right here. The non-billable items could be to do with labor, estimators, et cetera, and stuff like that. And in a previous podcast, we were looking at the considerations of your business, where your cost of operations are sitting, and do they need to be considered in this particular instance, right? So are our cost of operations too high? Are we spending too much money with our Google ads? Are we spending too much money with our SEO? Are our costs to acquire the work outweighing the work that we're actually doing? Are we paying too much money for something in regards to, say, it could be a subscription, it could be, hey, do we have too many of these or not enough of these? So having a look in that and seeing where it's particularly sitting to get an understanding where our cost of operations is, because the cost of operations minus where your gross profit is sitting is going to be dictating to where your net profit is sitting. Now, I want to reference back to having a look at measuring out some jobs. So we want to be having a look at measuring all of our small jobs and all of our big ones as well, right? So because we want to have a bit of an idea around where they are performing, because we might just be metrically looking at, hey, how are we going on the smaller jobs? So anything else that's getting closed out in a short period of time, and they seem to be going well, but we could be losing out on our larger jobs. So getting an understanding where it's sitting and what the influences are around the jobs that we're doing and what the outcome is around that. Is that affecting where our overall ability to have billable hours is sitting? So you may have a job that you have misquoted, for example. So it could be a project. You have lots of hours associated with the job. So you've allowed 400 hours for the job, and you are now at hour 500. So while your labor efficiency might be giving you the vibes of, hey, we're filling every single hour of the week, which is good, we are not billing every hour of the week. We are now gifting back. So our revenue is going to be low. Now, these are seasons that you may get stuck in from time to time. I would dare say there's not a single person out there who hasn't misquoted something in the past. That just happens, particularly a bit of a job that's 100 plus hours. It's what you learned from it and why it happened. Hey, did we mishandle it? Did we mismanage it? Could we have been a little bit better around that? Now, understanding that that's the cause and effect associated with it is that we have the ability to make a change. So, hey, I've got misquoted this. I don't want this to happen again. What did we learn from it all? So while, yes, it's giving us 100% labor efficiency for the labor allocated for the month. It's not giving us the information. It's not hitting the revenue that we need because we're down on our billable hours in that sense. So really, really understanding that, and to understand where you sit in there. So if you were able to have a metric, you look in the Beastamator, there's some forecasting associated in there with a metric of around a number that you need to be hitting in a revenue sense. Hey, so we could be looking at why are we falling short of that number and then cross-reference it down to, hey, what is occurring? Now, going back to cost of goods sold as well, what I have a look in here is that materials is a huge one. And I think it often gets overlooked by a lot of the time. And a lot of it's to do with the relationships with your wholesalers or the job management system that you have with it all. So a job management system, you can link in multiple suppliers in there to give you some real time and sort of, I guess, live examples associated with, hey, where could we get costs in a different way? Job management systems also give you the ability to send out supplier quotes to your suppliers in that particular sense also, to be able to get costings that are worth, that are good, basically, that are worthwhile. And so worthwhile in the sense of sending them out to your suppliers and getting back information that can be compared, and you can procure your material in a manner that is cost effective to your business. And if you're spending a considerable amount with your suppliers, 5 or 10% here all adds up. So we don't want to dismiss the small things. So the considerable amount is going to be thousands and thousands of dollars for everyone at a minimum, right? Up to tens of thousands of dollars for other people, and sometimes more if you're operating in material heavy spaces like the solar and aircon sectors, which are hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, if you look at a $100,000 wholesaler bill for the month, if you're able to get 5% in some cost savings just by being smarter in the way that you do business, that's $5,000 over a year. That's $60,000. So it's the compound effect over time. Materials can also be looked at with your suppliers in a sense that, hey, how do we have a look at ways to be able to be cost effective? So it could be substitute items. So looking at other items that we can come across to utilize in a way that is cost effective for the project, but still gets the same outcome. So it could be alternatives. And that's what I mean by the substitute. So, hey, if we're using item X, we can use item Y. Same, different in cost though. And then if you're using a volume of them, the multiply effect along the way. So having a look at where your materials can come in to reduce your cost of goods, which then in turn can raise up your GP. So these are all things that can be taken in consideration to be able to increase your net profit. So if we're looking at it in a real simplistic way, left to right, what are the influences on our revenue, right? Are we capturing everything? Are we getting our billable hours in? Are we billing everything out? Why isn't our revenue hitting where we want it to be, or why is it hitting where we need it to be? Cost of goods sold. Is there anything amongst here that we can look at to be able to be reduced, right? Or do we need to be more savvy? And the main influence on this is use of subcontractors and using your material. So they have influences around, hey, if we can lower those costs slightly, obviously then creates your GP. Other revenue is something to have a look at. Like, are we masking something by not taking into consideration, by taking too much into consideration the apprenticeship grants or things like that? So having a look at where other revenue comes from and being aware of it all. Looking at our cost of operations to be aware of where our costs are going and what the costs are associated with the business. Is there anything we can do to be more proactive and more cost effective to reduce them, which in turn will give us a better net profit at the end of the day? So simply reading it from left to right, what are the influences that are occurring across the board to ensure that I'm having a good week, a good month, and then a good year? What are the influences that I can change? What are the impacts that can be looked at to be able to make change? Do I need to spend some more time in the office? Do I need to get more organized? Do I need some help just to get my job management system sorted out? Do I need a bit of a push along to get things done? What are the influences that could help you achieve the outcomes that you're looking for? Knowledge is key. Hey, what should I be hitting roughly? Where should my revenue roughly be looking at? Where should my COGs roughly be looking at? What's my GP should I be roughly aiming for? Where my cost of operation sitting and why, and what is my target for my net profit to be? So having a look at it, having an understanding of like, these are all the influences that come at play to get my net profit, which is my target. I want more of this, I want more of that. So having a look at what the influences at play across the board and how can I control them? How can I get around them? What can I get better at to be able to get a better outcome around my net profit? So left to right, have a look at it. Where is it sitting? How are you performing in a close the month sense? And what can I change? What do I need to understand better? And what are the greater influences that will have a massive impact on me being able to perform better in my monthly close to hit the targets that I'm looking to achieve? As always, thanks for joining in. Hope you've enjoyed the pod and look forward to seeing you all again soon. Cheers.
That's a wrap on another podcast. Whatever you're doing, don't be too busy to stop and check if you're making money. And above all else, you know the rules. Be kind. See you soon.